So let's go ahead and talk about liquidity because liquidity obviously matters. So the first thing you need to realize is that high share volumes generally have more activity in the options market. And the reason for that is because if the share volumes are trading a lot, then that allows for market makers to be able to hedge a lot better. So there tends to be more active market making and also trading in the options market. So what I want you to do is look for at least an average of 1 million shares per day. Now, 3 million shares is better. 10 million shares is even better. It's going to allow for better opportunities when you're trading options. Now, here's the main thing that you need to take away. Illiquid shares in the underlying market, it makes for hedging options difficult. So think about that. If I'm a market maker, client comes in, they want to trade a block of options on an illiquid stock, I need to hedge my risk. And if the stock just doesn't trade that much, I am going to account for that when I make a market. And you better believe it's going to be wide. Now, other things that you need to consider are that wider bid-ask spreads make trading options difficult. And the reason for that is because if a market tends to be at like $1 at $5, well, how do you know what the right price for that market is? Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. And the reason it tends to be really wide probably has to do with the common shares just not trading enough volume for market makers to really get interested. So tight bid-ask spreads allow for better opportunity. And that's all we really care about is better opportunity. So bottom line here, common stock volumes do matter. So let's go ahead and have a look at what illiquid and liquid options look like. So here we have a stock, and the stock is Baby. Pretty cool name, right? Now, this stock actually trades on average anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000 shares a day. So let's have a look at what the options market looks like. So the stock is currently trading roughly around $35. Well, if I look at the 35 this is the April 35 put, 95 bid at 285 ask. That is super, super wide, and that's probably a reflection of the stock not trading very well for the underlying common shares. Now, if we go and look at a company like Microsoft that trades many millions of shares every single day on average, well, let's look at what the market looks like for those options. So again, Microsoft is trading roughly right around $90, and we're talking about the April 90 strike here. Well, let's go ahead and look at the puts. You can see the bid is 218 at 222. In fact, you can look all across the spectrum here, very tight markets. And a lot of that is a function of market makers being able to hedge their risk whenever they make a market. So remember, underlying shares and liquidity matters a lot in pricing up options. Now that we've covered why liquidity is very important, just keep in mind that the underlying share volumes do matter. The higher, the better. And you'll be able to see that reflected in the markets that you see on the screen when you go to trade options.